Welcome to another STEM Education Works webinar. I'm Shantae. There are those of y'all who don't know me. I'm very excited to introduce who I consider one of my very good friends, but also another amazing educator to help join me in talking about gifted education. We actually taught together. We taught gifted and talented together and also STEM together. We wrote curriculum together. And she's gone above and beyond per usual on everything she does. So I'm really excited to bring her on so we can talk about gifted people. So without further ado, hi, Lauren.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, there you are. Okay. Yep. I'm so excited to talk to everyone today. So I'm gonna let Lauren introduce herself first, and then we're gonna roll.
Hey there. I'm Lauren Kelly. I'm in Crowley ISD, which is a suburb of Fort Worth, Texas. This is my almost 14th year in education. 7 of that was in the gen ed classroom, but the last 6 have been doing STEM, GT, and an instructional science coach. So I'm here today to share some of my experiences with you as being a classroom teacher and how to integrate some of this gifted and talented mindset into your classroom, whether you're a gifted teacher or just a gen ed teacher.
So excited. So today's topic is going to be all about gifted kids. And who better to talk about it than someone who's still doing the work? It's been a couple years for me, so I'm excited to talk about how it was and how it is, and hopefully give you some pointers and some guidance on how to work with gifted kids to make the most of what their brain can do, and also giving them enough challenges that they're not bored or they don't feel motivated. So that's what we're hoping to give you some ideas today from. So without further ado, we're going to pull up this slide and get started. Anyone who's in the chat, I'll be monitoring. We'll also have other people monitoring. So if you have questions, please feel free to ask. We might address them at the end. We might address them at the moment, depending on the flow, but please don't hesitate to ask questions. So, yes, Lauren, I'm going to let you lead.
Definitely. And then
I'm going to follow.
Sure. Let's go. Let's go. Okay. All right. Perfect. Already kind of introduced myself. I did list some teacher PDs that I have attended in the past, because anytime I go to a PD, I'm always looking to see what else is there, because I'm looking to expand my horizons and find new ways that I can get ideas from other people. So I have a list of some of the PDs that I have attended. So if any of y'all are interested in any of these, at the end, I'm going to have my contact information. So you can reach out to me. I can share about these different workshops. The links to a lot of these, because they're actually currently in the application process. So if you're looking for something fun to do this summer where they actually pay you to learn, I can share all of that with you. But let's get into our actual content of the day today. Who is a gifted student? A gifted student in the classroom has advanced reasoning or problem-solving skills. They usually have intense curiosity. They're those kids that ask you all those what-if questions all the time. They also have a deep focus or a rapid idea generation. Like if you ask them a question, they just generate all kinds of ideas just super fast. But they also have asynchronous development. This could be academic. They could be well advanced or below. But they also have an emotional age level that may be different than their like age peers. So that's something to keep in mind with your GT kids. So giftedness is not how students think, not just what they know. So they're a little bit different. We're going to talk about some of the characteristics here in just a second. There we go. So here's some common characteristics with our GT students. They like to ask those unexpected questions, the complex questions. They become frustrated easily because sometimes they're bored in class. So they don't like to do all that easy work, so their mind's wandering. So sometimes that can become frustrating for them because they already know the content. So they're looking for something else to do. Sometimes they notice different patterns that others might miss because they're out of the box thinkers. Sometimes they actually hyper-focus on some different interests. And as a teacher, it's important to focus on those interests of them just to keep them occupied in the classroom and to keep that boredom from happening. But they also like to challenge the rules. They question the system. Why is this happening the way it is? Why are we doing this way? So being a teacher GT, you need to understand that they're not trying to fight back on anything. They're simply questioning why is something happening the way it is. They want to know the why behind everything. So as a teacher, you might just have the correct answer. Be 100% on all of their tests. Be mastery. They might be the fast finishers, well organized and well behaved. But once you start to learn about the GT kids, you realize that is not really the case. GT kids are sometimes the early finishers, but sometimes they never finish or they don't get started. Because they become bored or disengaged easily with the content. Sometimes they're perfectionists, so they have a hard time getting just started with the content. So keeping those characteristics in mind, it's important to help those students when you're in the classroom. They're not trying to fight you back. It's just how they are. They also have really intense emotions and can be what we call overly sensitive. So it's important to feel things a lot more intently than other students. So gifted students, the why behind them. Gifted students need more than just worksheets. They need a challenge. They need depth, they need complexity, and they need a purpose in their classwork. They want to know, why are we doing this? What's the purpose? What's going on? So when gifted students are recognized and supported, their engagement will increase, their creativity will flourish, they will build resilience and problem-solving skills. That perfectionism that a lot of them have, they'll overcome that better. And will use those assets for good instead of just disruptions.
That I love that you're. Can you hear me? I didn't know if it was delayed for you, but I was going to say I really love that we talk about like challenging them, not more work. We're not trying to give them more to do. We're giving them something that will be more challenging for them, which oftentimes we fall back on, like, let's just give them more because they're bored. But instead of giving them more when they're bored, giving them something more complex at the beginning, which I think is really a good start.
Yes, at a deeper level.
Yes.
And taking those interests and letting them fly with it. Yes, and really just honing in on that. So what happens if we don't cater to those GT kids? They're not just going to figure it out or learn on their own. I really do need us. They need supports just like any other student. If we tend to ignore the GT kid, they're going to underachieve. They actually are at high risk of dropping out of high school and not finishing. They can become disengaged. They have behavior issues because they feel bored and not like emotionally at the same level as their peers, or they think differently than their peers and they don't feel like they belong. They do tend to have a lot of anxiety, perfectionism, or they'll shut down in the classroom if like they do begin to struggle. And we can lose a lot of creativity and innovation if we don't help cater our classrooms to our gifted students. There could be a huge loss there if we don't support those students. Exactly. All right, if you give a student a challenge, I'm going to go through a little picture book bracket. There we go. We'll go through this quickly. I'm having to click and wait. It's okay.
There we go. We just have to have patience.
So, in our story, if you give a student, yeah, it's all good. So if you give a student a real world problem, they'll want to understand it deeply. They want to know the why behind it. They want to understand more about it. They want to know more than just the surface level. Okay. All right, there you go. But if they start to understand the problem, they want to know more. A lot of our GT students are very empathetic for others. So if they see or hear about a problem, they want to do something about it. They want to solve it. They want to help. So let's take that characteristic and use it to our benefit in the classroom. And I'm going to share a little bit about that here in just a little while. If they have a problem, they'll research it. They'll want to observe it. They want to analyze. And that's how they learn more about what is going on. Now they have lots of questions, right? Now they really want to dive in deep. Here's where all the questions come in. Well, what about this? What about this? How about this? That's where the next step comes in. So now after they're asking a lot of questions, you're like, okay, what about that? But let's do some research. Let's see what's happened, right? Now they need to generate some ideas on how to solve these problems. And we're going to dive deep into the invention process here in just a few minutes on how you can help these students through this process to actually have a project in the classroom that they can share with others. Okay, so once they have some ideas for a project or how to solve something, this is where your engineering design process comes in. This is where they design a solution, they test it out, they try it a few times, they make improvements. If you've been familiar with STEM, you're familiar with this process. You have an idea, you think about how to solve it. This is where your STEM materials come in, your makerspace materials come in. You let them design, build, and create, test it out, and improve it. Then, finally, gifted students in the invention process. So I'm going to share about what happened over the summer with me is I got to go to Detroit, Michigan, to the Innovation Institute. There, they have an educator program where they actually teach you about the innovation process. I was going to go through this process with my students this year. It's perfect for GT. I have a link here that I'll share with you with a free curriculum, that you can be used in several different ways in your classroom, whether you're a gen ed teacher, a STEM teacher, after school, whatever format you're in. This will be beneficial for you. So let me briefly share about the Henry Ford Innovation Institute and their free curriculum that they have, because I really think as an educator, anytime I can get something for free, it's good.
Everyone loves free.
Okay. You there?
Yep.
You see the inHub?
Yep.
Oh, yeah, definitely. So this link will be shared. So the Henry Ford Museum in Detroit is a great place if you're ever available to go visit. But if not, they have an online program with lots of free curriculum resources. So they have video, they have Kahoots, they have downloadable lessons, pictures of the artifacts, the history behind the artifacts that they have, all kinds of different items for you to use in your classroom in multiple ways. All you have to do is log in and make an account, and then you're set up. That's all you can do. It is very user-friendly for the teacher too. You can share Kahoots or Google Classroom. So if you find assignments, you can share it with your students very easily, or you can print out the resources if you prefer it on paper. They have lots of STEM challenges already prepared for you. They really use a GT mindset when they created their items for their website. And I'm going to share a little bit about some of those icons here in the next slide. But it's really flexible. They have short 20-minute lessons with videos, and they have extended projects that could get you through the entire year. So depending on what you're looking for, there's something on there for you. It's really good if a student has a very special interest. There's probably something on there that they would like to dive into, and they could do an independent research project using the resources here so that you're giving them an extra level of depth to their learning. So next thing I wanted to share with you is something called the Model I. So if you've ever taught GT, the depth and complexity icons. Well, at the Henry Ford Museum, they have what they call the Model I primer icons. They're very similar. So they build on the habits of an innovator and the actions of innovation. So for example, the learning from failure. They have SEL lessons, and they talk about real life people who have solved problems or invented things through the mindset of learning from failure, which is good, especially for a GT kid, because sometimes if they don't get it right the first time, they kind of want to shut down. But if they can see that it's okay, if something doesn't work out the first time, then I can, become better over time. And they try to get famous people in the past as their examples. So like learning from failure, their example is Thomas Edison, because it took him over 100 tries to make the light bulb. So now here's somebody in real life that these students can relate to. So what's good is you can give these lessons to individual students. Maybe a student needs to work on a certain skill, or maybe you notice that your entire class is really needing to work on collaboration. You can give them the Kahoot, you can do the little mini lessons. It's very flexible. And they have these little icons in posters, or you can print it out. And all of their lessons are kindergarten through 12th grade. So depending on your grade band, you can find something that's appropriate for your age group. And they do have a free teacher workshop You have to do an application, and they send 25 teachers to spend a week in Detroit to learn at the museum all about this curriculum and how they use it in their. There we go. Okay. Another thing I wanted to share was the Invention Convention National Contest. So here, if you get into the inventor mindset, they actually have a national contest where your students, if they apply and they make it through, can go to the national contest and compete with students from across the nation. Business, industry people will be there as the judges. And there have been students who have won scholarships to college or money for getting their ideas patented. These are life-changing contests and people that they could possibly meet. And what's really cool is you see the other little hubs on the side. A lot of states have their own hubs within the state. This is actually the second year, I believe, that Texas A&M has been the host city for the state of Texas. So if you are in Texas and you make it to the regionals, then you get to go to Texas A&M, and then those students that are the finalists get to fly out to Detroit to meet all the other students from across the nation for the big contest. Even if you're not doing a contest at like the national level, which is probably not something I'm going to be doing this year, but I am doing it at my district level. Something to consider, you're getting those students prepared for the future. They're speaking, they're making a project for somebody in front of them, right? Maybe you're not even ready for a district level. Maybe you can do something at the campus level or even classroom. Have your own little mini contest, something to get the students up and thinking and sharing their ideas with others. But maybe keep this in the back pocket of your mind. You could possibly think about in a couple of years, maybe I'm ready because I've practiced this for a few times and I want to get my kids beyond just this campus to the national or state level. That'd be fantastic. All of this curriculum is on the inHub website. So when you get to the inHub website, there's a separate area for the Invention Convention contest. I am doing this with my 4th and 5th GT students. We are doing this purpose, so like all of my campus students will get to go to a district level contest. Eventually, I'm hoping that once we get past the district level contest, we can make it to the state level and then hopefully the national level. That's the goal. But a very brief summary of this invention process, it does very much sound like almost like a science fair, if you've ever done a science fair or any other big PBL project. Very similar in the steps. In the first step, you need a problem. You can't solve anything if you don't have a problem. So this is where the students are researching. They're observing authentic issues. That's the point. It's not make-believe stuff. They're looking in their own lives. They're looking at the school, the community around them, people they care about, the world at large. So we spent a few weeks really diving into all kinds of problems. I had students share problems around the house. Maybe there's a chore you don't like to do. Well, how can you make that better? Or do you have a family member who maybe is disabled? Is there something you can come up with to help them? All of those things. Lots of brainstorming, slowing it down, and thinking about others. Now, this is great for GT because they naturally empathize with others. They want to help. They want to fix things. So they see something they consider wrong. They're like, what can I do about it? I want to fix it. I want to make it better. So giving them that opportunity really just feeds those GT students. It validates their thinking like, hey, I'm very advanced in my thinking. I don't think like everybody else, but maybe I can use that to better somebody. I can use this for good. Let me help somebody with this. Okay, so in step 2, they have to start understanding more. You have a problem, but like, why is that a problem? Like, what's like more about it? So what is causing the problem? What is making it occur? Why hasn't it been solved already? If it's a problem and I'm noticing it, has anybody else noticed it? And then who's impacted by this issue, by this problem? And then thinking about other solutions that maybe others have come up with. And then describing what it would mean if the problem went away. So if they were to solve it, what would happen? What kind of solution would that look like? And just really diving deep into that. Another important thing to focus in is making sure that they're not copying a solution that already exists. For the national contest, they have to have original ideas. So students are gonna have to research and make sure that whatever they come up with is unique and special and new. So this allows them to really hone in on those research skills and really dive deep. So they're going to brainstorm a wide range of solutions. Sometimes with GT, they come up with an idea and that's it. You're like, yeah, but what if there's a better solution? Sometimes there's multiple ideas to solve the problem. And it's important for them to, first of all, see what else is out there to make sure they don't copy it, but generate multiple solutions for the same problem. They can build on what's already been done before. They can be inspired by other things. They can combine other ideas. Maybe they saw two possible solutions they liked, and they can combine it together. Then they would have something new. The important thing is to really dive deep and make sure that their first idea is not their only idea. Because sometimes GT kids will get stuck with like, well, that's my idea and that's it. But I'm like, baby, that's the idea. Sometimes you need to keep looking because maybe there's another solution that's even better. Making sure that they continue the research and to continue to look. Okay. This is a fun part for them, for a lot of students. This is where they're designing. They're not making it yet. They're sketching. It's important for these students to do a really good detailed sketch. So when I'm telling them when they're making their sketches, make sure it's so detailed that if you were to hand it to a friend, that they could literally make your prototype. So you need to label all the materials and also make your sketches from multiple angles. This is to give them practice in like what real engineers do, which is not just, a lot of our kids, they like to do the side view. That's what they're used to. But they're like, well, what does your idea look like from the top or from underneath or from a side angle? And making sure they're extremely detailed to the point where like they can hand that engineering sketch to somebody else and they could replicate their idea. You really want them to slow it down, take their time and do multiple design options, because then they could really see if their thinking is on point or not. But also making sure they can label all their materials, making sure that the materials we have in the classroom is something that they can use in their sketch and their idea, or maybe they need to invent something to even like make their prototype. So they really need to slow down whenever they're making their sketches so that they have the most detailed sketch, because when they're doing the judging process, these judges will be looking at their sketches, and if they can't tell from their sketch what it is that they're making, they could possibly lose points. And that really slows down our GT kids. They have to look at multiple perspectives, different angles, and all of that just to help them with their thinking. Now, here's the fun part. This is what all of our kids try to jump into. They want to do this immediately. Let's get to the building. But we really have to slow down those GT kids, because you can't immediately start building even though they want to. So you have to make them slow down, think about their ideas. What do you really want to do? Make sure you've done your research. Make sure you have your sketch. Then you can find what are the prototypes we have, what's the time we have, budget, being realistic with your design, making sure it's actually going to like be feasible in the time frame that we have. And then getting to the point where you have to make adjustments, because, sometimes the first one doesn't work out the well as you want, and that's okay. And giving them plenty of time to do that testing. Because, again, the first build is usually not the best build. And they're going to have to test it multiple times to make sure it actually works. And they're going to get more into testing in the next phase, which we'll share here in just a second. And take pictures, they collect data, all of that good stuff whenever they're doing their testing. Now they have to test. This is where you test. And you collect what worked, what didn't work, because when they get to the judging, the judges are going to ask, well, how did this work the first time? And they're like, oh, it didn't. Okay, well, what'd you do the next time? What'd you do the next time? What'd you do the next time? And actually, the more times you test, the more data you get, the better it is. Because that means you really put a lot of thought and effort into it. And it really helps those kids realize that it's okay to slow it down, take multiple steps, break it down, and develop a system for testing and recording what worked and what didn't work. And then having data to support your thinking, and not just, well, I thought it worked or it was working, but actually showcasing that data in the research. And it really helps when it comes to whenever they have the more details, the better, the more data, the better. That really helps those kids. And it helps with the judging process too. And it's important to do this in the classroom, like maybe have them practice all of these steps so that whenever they get to an adult and they're trying to share, they've had plenty of practice. All right, this is the last step of the invention process. This is where they get to share, finally, their idea. So if you're doing this just in the classroom, the students could each come up and share with their classmates. Or you could do like a gallery walk style, whatever works best for you. If you're doing it like at a campus level, maybe you have a room set up and maybe you have some teachers come in and they could walk around and be your judges. Or like how we're doing it at the district level, we're gonna have some outside people come in. We've made them a rubric and we're gonna have judges from the outside come in to like look at our students. But it's important for our students to actually talk about their ideas, explain their thinking, their research, the process they went to. They need to share and be validated that what they did was worth it. And adults will be nice to them. Of course, they'll give them good feedback, tell them, hey, next time don't think about this, or what could you do to make it better? And it really builds that confidence and that leadership in those GT kids, in them knowing that, hey, I can do this. I have potential. I can do great things. I have leadership skills. So it's just really a good boost for our GT kids to be able to share their ideas with other adults, not just the students that are in their classroom. And if you're able to get outside sources in, like if you have some friends or anybody you know in industry, if they can come into the classroom and help support, that's always good too, because it's nice for those GT kids to see other people outside of their teacher coming in and to support and care about what they're doing. So why does this process work for our gifted learners? It honors their curiosity. It allows them to think on multiple levels. So they're thinking about, their research, their sketching skills, their presentation skills, their speech skills, lots of different levels here. If they're truly engaged and they find a passion project, they're not going to misbehave because they're busy. You've given them some important work to do. And you haven't given them just busy work. It's important work that is valuable. You're helping them to understand that what they do is good for society and they can make a benefit in their community. So it validates their feelings in them and builds their self-confidence. One last little thing. All right, so what are some quick ways you can support your gifted students? Give them a real world problem. The storybooks, sometimes that works for them, but lots of times they see the world, they want to understand the world, they emphasize with what's going on in the news and other things. Give them a problem that is actually happening in the world around them or in just in their own personal lives. They want to solve it. Slow them down. They need to slow down. Give them a purpose. So sometimes they want to rush things just to be done, but help them slow down and realize there's other solutions. There's more research to do. Take it to a deeper level. Add more depth to it, help them analyze more, give them like the ethics behind things. Why is that a good thing or a bad thing? Especially if you can give them a question that's not black and white, that's very open-ended, and then have them decide and then explain why they chose what they did. More than just, here's a worksheet, here's extra work. We don't want to do that. And then making things visible. So the sketches, the diagrams, the data tables, it helps with a lot of their cognitive and in helping them with visualizing their thinking. A lot of my students are really good with the anchor charts. They like to draw their thinking, especially if they're learning like some new vocabulary words. Maybe it's a struggle for them to understand those words, but if they can find a visual for them, that really helps it. And it's not just for GT, that helps with all students. And going back to communicating, authentic audiences. So they need to find peers, industry people, somebody that's similar to them. When they get to go to the district, maybe you can have some high school students come that are in pathways that they're interested in. Maybe you can have a Zoom with an industry expert that can come talk to your students about an interest, or you can provide them videos. Anything to make outside of the classroom come to them. That really helps. And then allowing them to explore and ask lots of questions because they're very curious. And it's important to keep that creativity going and not to hinder it, because we don't want to shut them down. We want them to be creative and to continue to learn and to continue to want to be creative and solve problems in the classroom. So let's rethink what we're doing for our gifted students. We don't want to just give them more worksheets. Here's busy work. Here's something else to do. Or something like, oh, you're good at 5th grade. Here's just a 6th grade packet. That's not enough for these kids. They need a purpose behind what we're doing in the class. Why are we doing this? Explain to them why we're doing this. Give them a challenge, either individually, or maybe you have a group of GT kids and they all have the same interests. Let them dive deep into it. Like, go to the next level with them, and then give them a chance to invent, explore, and grow. So if they have a hyper-focused activity, like maybe they're super into, Pokemon, how can you tie that into your science lesson and let them dive deep into that? So you're doing ecosystems and environments, right? Well, if this character lived in this ecosystem, what structures and functions would it need to survive? That type of stuff. Taking it to the next level. And now you have that kid and they're diving deep and they're going to have a whole report for you at the end of the week because you've given them something to hang on to. So make sure to give our students a challenge just so that we can create the next inventor, the next innovator, and to continue to grow our students.
Awesome. There's so much that we can glean from all of this. And I feel like, again, Lauren and I taught together as gifted teachers. And one of the things that I feel like happened often for me was I really went in depth with some of this stuff and then realized, like, as I planned it and like created all these lessons and stuff, I realized that I got so ahead of myself, and the kids actually do take over often and start to make it their own project. So for instance, like Lauren and I did like a kid city thing where we started out where the kids had to design how they were going to get to the island to create a kid city, and then what were they going to use for transportation. Then my students took it down the path of, oh my gosh, we want to create laws for our city. We want to actually come up with what those laws are going to look like, what people have to follow. And that's stuff that I wasn't even thinking about. And I had created these lessons and I was like, wait, if I just back off a little bit instead of trying to push what I'm trying to work on, these kids actually will take me there, which was so fascinating to watch. They took over and they were like, okay, we've got this. This is what we want to do. And then we let up and it really was amazing. It really was. And it's so hard to do. I know, because you want things to go a certain way. And it's super easy to, as a teacher, be like, yeah, this is how I planned it out, which most of the time they are really good lessons, guys. It's not that. It's just we're like wanting it to go that way instead of allowing for the kids to lead. So that's the biggest part for me. That was the hardest. When it came to any projects or anything I did with them, it was like, hold up. I understand they have a really good path that I want to take, but sometimes the kids take us another way, and that's okay too. So with that being said, Lauren, people are asking if they can have your slides, and I obviously didn't want to offer them up unless it was something you were willing to share.
No, it's fine.
So if you want to get the slides, Lauren, do you want them to just reach out and email you, or how do you want to work that?
Yes, that's fine. Actually, on the one next slide over, I have my contact. So anybody that can email me or find me on social. So
perfect. Also,
yeah,
there's some questions. We have a question about what are some examples of open-ended questions you ask to start the PBL process with your gifted students? So what's some ideas or some examples of how you start out with these lessons?
For the invention specifically, we spend basically each day diving from personal problems and expanding out. So the first day I'm like, so what are some problems at home that y'all have? And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, so does anybody have to do the dishes? And they raise their hand. Yes. Well, what are some other chores y'all have to do? What are some other things around the house that you don't like doing? You're like, oh, well, I don't like this. I don't like that. I'm like, could it be better? And they're like, yeah. I'm like, how? Well, how could it be better? Well, what if it was automated? I don't know. What if it was? So we spent a whole day talking about personal problems they have at the home. Like, I don't like this chore. And then the next day we would talk about, what about at school? What is something at school that could be better? And then so I would just ask a basic question and be like, but how would it be better? What else could you do? What else is out there? And they're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, let's go see. Go write it down. I would just ask the questions back to them and keep it as open as possible. I'm like, well, why don't you think there's already a machine that washes dishes? Why is that? And hard or something like that. So keeping it as open as possible. And then I have a template, which I can actually share that too, of the brainstorming process that we went through to guide the students through the invention process. And it's step by step. Just because with the GT setup that I have, I only see these kids once a week. So I didn't get to see them every day. Hey, remember yesterday when we did? No. So I have a packet that I have where we lay down all their questions and record it. But it's about just not answering the questions for you. Or like if we're talking about something with science, they're like, well, how come this magnet doesn't attract to this? I'm like, I don't know. Why do you think that is? I just straight up ask them back. They're like, I don't know. I'm like, well, let's look it up. Let's find out. I don't want to answer the questions for them. So that I always try to make them try to seek it out to the next level. That's always my goal is, especially with the GT, you're going to have to be a self-learner. Most of the time they're on their own, unfortunately, in the classroom. So if you have a question, you need to be able to look it up yourself and figure out why do you think this is. So unfortunately, yeah. Mm-hmm.
This question is actually really good because we both know how hard it is sometimes to cut off kids when it's time to move on. But the question is, how do you know when to cut off a project? I feel like my kids keep going on as long as they'll let them, that's a good problem to have in some ways, but I also understand the irritation behind like, when do I cut it? Is it too soon? Is it time? Which is a very hard thing to do.
It is. It depends on the project, but I always start with the end. I'm like, hey, we have this project. It's due in May. That means you have 10 weeks to get it done or whatever. So, and I break it down by each week we're doing this. And I'm like, hey guys, we should be at this point. We should be at this point. And I give them that scaffold, that outline that we have to be here. And at some point I'm like, hey, I love all your ideas. This is great. Keep in mind, this project's due in 3 weeks. So let's go ahead and focus on what you got here. And then if we have enough time, we can go back and add those extra components. So don't dismiss it saying, no, we don't have that, because you might have actually time for that. Focus on what they have done. Give them that timeline, because sometimes they forget, and just be like, hey, let's write their ideas, because you don't want to dismiss their ideas. That's, otherwise you lose them if you dismiss them. But sometimes they work faster because then they want to get back to that idea they had.
It's true. I was going to say also, when I've done it before, I've said, this is how long we have to work on this project. Whatever we do in this time frame is what we're going to do. And then at the end of the year, when we have time, we can bring back some of your favorite things to do more with them. And I feel like sometimes that appeases them, but it is really hard. I don't even want to pretend it's not a hard process, because it is.
No.
Pamela is asking, are there any ideas for accommodating a single GT student in a mixed level class? Which is such a good question.
Yeah, that's difficult. I mean, if you have access to technology, you can provide them individual things. So like if I had Google Classroom and I knew that the student was really interested in such and such, then I can provide them an individual in-depth thing based on a topic of interest for them. So going back to like, if my student is really interested in Pokemon, but I'm talking about ecosystem, then that individual student could do a individual project based on those two ideas. And it could be something, maybe they do it on paper, maybe they have Google Classroom, but giving them their own little project to do. Maybe they create a poster with their Pokemon in the ecosystem or something, but don't dismiss them. And make sure that you're always checking in with them as far as, I have some that they need extra guidance sometimes, if you want to say it that way, and making sure that you're asking those in-depth questions. And it goes back to having an individual plan for them. So making sure that they get the individual supports that they need, just like you would if you had a SPED student in your classroom, you're going to give them the accommodations. And you could just give them the next level step. So if they're research and they're ready for the next level, then they can provide, okay, especially with the inHub, there's different inventors. So you can have them compare two inventors. Well, what's similar with these two inventors? What's not? So it's all about giving them individual projects. I really wish you could cluster them because GT students really feed off of each other and they need to be with other like-minded students, but we don't always get what we want as far as that goes. But.
That was a good, yeah. And I was going to say too, on top of that, like when it comes to these GT students, obviously like it's really hard when you have one and you're like, okay, I can't, like you don't have all this time to dedicate to one student because you have 25, depending on the year or what's happening at the school. I've had 32 before in my class, and that's a lot of fifth graders to cram into a small room. But I will say too, just giving them like a real world problem where they can actually do like the research and stuff. Whereas sometimes I would have to provide that for the other students in order to get through it in time, allowing them to kind of do some of their own research instead of providing them with some of the details actually is really helpful sometimes. So that's what I was going to add to that. The next question is, I have many gifted students for roughly 4 hours a day, but only one of those hours is dedicated to science/STEM every other day. So how would you handle this situation? Essentially, I want to integrate math, ELA, and social studies with these students. I was going to start by saying exactly like what I was talking about earlier with the Kid City, because I feel like when you get those kind of real world projects like that, where you're saying you're building a real world situation where you're creating a city for kids, you're covering, they have to understand the ecosystem and how it works. They're going to have to understand how to provide. We're very much focused on how you're getting energy to your island. So all of that science stuff. Then they're talking about creating laws and rules for it. You're covering social studies in that way. It's really easy for them to have to be given a budget that they follow, including like creating data sheets from that information that they're gathering as they're doing the research. So I feel like math kind of falls into that as you do that. There's a lot to it. When you require the research, ELA is covered because they have to do research and gather key information from that. So there's a lot of that going on. So those kind of projects where it's like, hey, they have to do this, all of that has to be done in order for the project to be complete. Makes it a little easier to make it where instead of having 1 hour, you have 4 because you're doing everything you need to do in that block. It's not easy. And I know I made it sound like, oh yeah, that's nothing. It's not. Yeah, project lead the way, but so much of STEM is team-based, and that is really hard for gifted kids often to be part of a team. And a lot of times they're being used to be like, oh, you're going to teach other kids how to do that. And that's not fun for them. It's usually the easiest way, but it is kind of frustrating for them. All right. Cora says, I work in a makerspace and I find one of my hardest problems is keeping the kids' attention. Valid. Due to the space we're in, and they want to ask lots of questions about the machines we have and want to touch them. In the end, the project we are working on ends up not getting done or given a 50% effort. Do you have tips on keeping kids' attention or interest in the project? I was going to say, when it comes to the machines and all of the stuff around the room, I will say, and then I'll let Lauren add her stuff, but I will say that I do like a 10-minute explorer section where I let them just like explore all of the options that are there and all of the like toys and things so that they can kind of have time to just play and get to know them before I actually give them the project, so they're not as distracted by that stuff. But Lauren, what do you have?
Yeah, I was going to do the same thing, like the 10-minute open share just to get the energy out. Just hard. Let them have that free explore time, and making sure that you're not just being stagnant, like try to make sure that you're getting them up and moving and trying to mix up the slides. Like for me, I always try to like, okay, I'm going to give them a slide or two where I'm talking. Now there's a video. Now maybe getting up and looking at something around the room, something to keep them up and moving. Because if they sit for too long, you're losing their attention before they get up and get a chance. But also timers. Like, hey, you got, for mine, like they'll get so into the sketching process and be like, you're now eating up your building time. So you can either keep sketching or you can get to the build. And then, okay, I'm setting the building timer. You have 15 minutes and that's all you get to build your prototype. And then that timer counting down will help a lot of students with the visual and helping them see that, oh, I only got so much time, I really need to lock in, focus in. So anytime you can give them a visual with the timer, that definitely helps too.
Agreed. That's literally the only reason I was able to make it through projects as the teacher. So I'm just saying, like, I would be like, oh no, I didn't use my time wisely. So having those on your slides helps a lot. But I will also say that I rotated expectations of the kids each time they came in the room. So like, I might have an expectation that you're in charge of this, but the next time you come, it's going to be this, and you're not doing the same job within your team every time you come in the room, so that way it's rotated through, and everybody's doing different things each time, and your expectations are different. So then it keeps their interest a little easier. At least it did for me. Hopefully that helped. I'm so sorry. There's lots of great questions. Mm-hmm. On average, this is a really good question. How much time do you give at each stage of the process? That's a hard question to answer.
It depends on the grade level.
Valid.
Yeah.
I would say though, like, it altered for me, like it alters depending on what the project is. Sometimes I spend more time in like the beginning part of it because they need more background knowledge. Sometimes I spend more time in the build process because they need more time on that. So it really depends on the project and how much pre-knowledge they have, at least for me. If they have a lot of pre-knowledge before they come in, that's not even the right word. So I realize that now, but like, you know, prior knowledge is what I'm looking for. It helps when you have that.
Yes.
Yeah, that's
Cora, yeah, that's, same. It depends on how much context they've had before they come in.
Yeah, it's true. These questions have been really amazing. Thank you guys, and like really engaging and very helpful, hopefully, to discuss. Yeah, trying to learn the best way to go about things in STEAM and STEM programs, it is really hard. And Lauren and I started out, when we both started out, we had very little knowledge of STEM. So there's a lot of like stuff we've had to go to and learn from, and like attend all of these things, do research on our own. So we definitely have spent a lot of time doing that. So it is a lot of work, and I don't want it to seem like it's not. So thank you for the work you're doing. And also know, Lauren's an amazing resource. Like, she really is, and she really does make sure she's staying relevant. But also, like, please reach out to us as well if you need some support. We obviously have curriculum and things that we have made that are out there as well. But I know it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work to do these jobs, and I thank you for doing them. Please don't stop doing them. And if we can help you make it easier, we want to do that as well. Any other questions? Anything else from anyone? This was really fun. It's always fun when I get to hang out with Lauren. And it's really nice when I have people in the comments that are engaged. So thank you. I know it's not always fun to do this after work too. So thank you for giving some of your time to us. It does not go unnoticed. Anything else, Lauren?
No, we're good. Just thank you for attending. Sorry for the delay, but we'll get the slides out for you. And if you have any questions, just reach out.
Please do. Yep. And next month is spring break, so we're not doing a webinar, but we really thank you for coming to the webinar this month. We will have more stuff coming out later, TBD. But please feel free to reach out for anything that you need or any resources that you might have, because that's what we want to do, is make sure that you feel supported and seen and validated, because we really do appreciate the work you do. And I really do want you to feel valued, because you do so much for the future generations. And I know it is some blood, sweat, and tears. Mm-hmm. It is never not that. So thank you. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for existing with us today. And if there's anything that we can do to help, please reach out. Until next time, though, thank you. And we'll see you soon, hopefully